Hello, and welcome to the End of the World. I'm Sarah Roberts.
And I'm Mia Capozzoli, and today we'll be talking about two films, one good and one evil. And by evil, we mean terrible.
The two films we'll be discussing are the original version of Left Behind, released in 2000 and directed by Vic Sarian, and the 2014 remake directed by Vic Armstrong.
Both of these films deal with the biblical prophecy of the end of the world, also known as the rapture. The Bible says the rapture is the time when those who are faithful to God ascend to heaven, while the unfaithful are left to suffer 7 terrible years of death and destruction. Oh, and also the Antichrist comes.
Left Behind is based on a novel by evangelists Tom LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins. The original film revolves around the television journalist and non-believer Buck Williams, who is trying to understand the reason behind the disappearance of millions of people around the world. He soon comes to realize, through the help of Ray Steele, that there is no worldly explanation for the disappearances, and the biblical prophecy of the rapture has begun.
In 2000, when Left Behind was released, the world was a little preoccupied with the end of the world. In late 1999, there was a Y2K scare where people believed that there would be a systematic failure in all computer systems because the computers did not have the ability to understand the date change. Seems kind of like a weird thing to be scared of, but okay. The dot-com bubble also reached its peak and started to tumble, eventually leading to a crisis for many tech companies and their investors. There were 28 plane crashes in the year 2000, which you'll see is quite fitting if you watch the film.
The remake of Left Behind was released in 2014, and there was a lot of pretty terrible stuff going on at this time. The Ebola epidemic became a global health crisis. A Malaysian airline flight went missing along with 239 passengers. There was unrest in both Ukraine and Israel, and the extreme terrorist group ISIS was on the rise. In general, the original Left Behind film was received far better by critics, but still not very good, scoring only a 16% on Rotten Tomatoes. However, just when you think it can't get any worse, the 2014 remake scored 1% on Rotten Tomatoes. Who even knew a 1% score was possible?
Not me. But these films definitely have religious themes as they are an interpretation of the book of Revelations written by the disciple John. Although based on the same novel, the films are unique in which elements of the rapture they focus on and how they portray this. The original film has a stronger emphasis on religion. The storyline includes more specific elements of the rapture. For example, the notion of 7 terrible years and the coming of the Antichrist were both present in the original film, but not in the remake.
While the original film has religion integrated into the plot, the rapture is more of a backdrop for the rest of the story to unfold in the remake. In the original film, there is a prophet who tells Buck that the apocalypse is coming. Buck recorded this interaction and later realized it was in a different language, leading to the question, how did he understand? This appears to be a mystical element, possibly suggesting that religion is a universal language, or simply that the man was magical.
Or sacred, considering the interaction took place on sacred land in Israel at the base for Project Eden. And like we said earlier, the original film includes the Antichrist, who comes in the form of a manipulative and charming UN leader. Pretty terrifying. But don't worry, Buck Williams caught on to him after having his own come-to-Jesus moment.
Yeah, additionally, the transformation of Ray Steele from an atheist believing his wife is crazy and cheating on her because he thinks her religious fervor is taking a toll on their marriage and downright annoying, into a grief-ridden widower who finally realizes his wife was just so full of love for their family and wanted to see them saved from what was to come. This transformation occurs with the help of their pastor in an informational video made 3 years prior that detailed the coming of the end of the world.
In comparison, in the remake, religion takes a backseat to the action and the romance between Buck and Chloe and Ray and Hattie, the flight attendant. Most of the film takes place on a doomed airplane, while the rest of the film shows Chloe aimlessly running around a chaotic city looking for her mom and brother. The only really religious element is the disappearance of believers, and then I guess Ray's recognition that his wife was correct in her beliefs.
Yeah, for me, I think the first film made me feel like I was part of the plot and like a part of Buck's transformation, and the religious elements were way more clear. I also liked how there was more to the plot other than just a plane in distress. There were way more character development in the original.
I agree. Good point, Sarah. In the first film, they kind of resolved the idea of the mom being crazy through Ray's transformation, but in the remake, it was more like, wow, The mom's still crazy, but just happened to be right. I feel like Chloe and Ray never really recognized that the mom was just trying to save them in the remake.
Yeah, I think the original film was made to appeal to more people who were interested in seeing more overt religious elements on screen, whereas the remake seems like they were trying to appeal to the masses with all the action and the romance.
Mm-hmm. In 2000, evangelical culture was trying to enter mainstream entertainment. A fun fact that I just know off the top of my head is that in 1999, Billboard.com reported that Christian pop rock was the 5th largest genre in the music industry, with album sales increasing by 11.5%.
Wow, that is a fun fact. The remake was probably trying to unite Hollywood in typically separated evangelical Christian movies by working with more experienced production teams. It might be because of its attempt to appeal to mainstream audiences that it ended up having no real meaning and spreading no real message. The religious elements are vague, and where the original film included more specific biblical elements of the rapture, the remake decided to include things that didn't add to the plot at all, like humor that wasn't even funny.
Boom! Roasted, Sarah!
Hold your horses. I'm not even done roasting this movie. I think it's time to talk about the myth of the apocalypse.
Ooh, the myth of the apocalypse is my favorite.
Yeah, it's one of mine as well. So let's begin. The myth of the apocalypse is the idea that at one time everything was great. People were really living their best lives. However, this golden age ended with a really big screw up, and things have gone hill ever since.
Oh, so kind of like when Eve ate the apple and left humanity with original sin. I get it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, both movies definitely have elements of this myth. The second film included that crazy lady at the airport who approached Buck to scream at him about the end of the world, and she mentioned several natural disasters and was like, yeah, that's God, and he's warning of you at Judgment Day. Buck and Chloe didn't really take her seriously, but maybe in hindsight they should have.
Yeah, a lot of times, films that include the myth of the apocalypse are a hybrid of the conventional disaster movie, which I think is fair to think of the second one as this type of disaster apocalypse hybrid, and the first one is more apocalyptic due to the presence of the Antichrist, which signals that the apocalypse is really coming. So,
Sarah, what's your takeaway from these films?
Well, Mia, I think I better start praying. Just kidding, but I personally liked the original film better.
Yeah. I agree, me too. Remakes are never as good as the originals.
Yeah, never. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time. Please follow our page and let us know what you think in the comment section.
Have a great rest of your day and make sure to watch out for the Antichrist. You never know who it might be.